What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb and I'm here to tell you you are building Cloud wrong. I see a ton of people suiting this guy up, getting him to 21 power, one-shotting your opponent and doing the Voltron thing. And that just completely ignores what breaks this card. So today I've got a unique, powerful build that is going to absolutely break Cloud. But before we do that, let's click on that whatnot link in the description down below. You guys get a free $15 and it helps out the channel. Additionally, you guys can get 20% off all of your Tolarian library proxies whenever you use code DT4D. And last but not least, if you would like, comment, and subscribe if you are enjoying the content, it really helps me out. Now, let's talk about what Cloud does. First off, he's 5 CMC. Whenever he enters the battlefield, we get to just go ahead and attach a Colossal Hammer to this guy. Any equipment, but let's not lie, it's Colossal Hammer. Additionally, he says whenever he attacks, we get to draw a card for each creature that is attacking and equipped. This is what breaks this guy. Now, if you only do the Voltron strategy, this guy says draw a card and generate 2 treasure tokens a turn. Not very good. But what if we do Living Weapons? Living Weapons is going to allow us to go super wide in the early game with 4 Mirrodin and Living Weapon cards, and then by the time we're able to cast Cloud, we're going to instantly refill our hand and draw up to 5 cards. Then we compare it with other cards like Extra Combat Steps and sort of Feast and Famine, Waste on top of our lands, and we can kind of just rifle through our deck while smashing our opponents in the face. Doesn't that just sound like an amazing idea? There's a lot of pitfalls I ran into while building this deck. I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about why the deck is so efficient, and we're going to talk about how I overcame those pitfalls. So let's get right into it. The first version of this deck was absolutely broken, and it worked perfectly in a vacuum if I'm honest. The goal was to get upwards to 3 to 4 Living Weapons or 4 Mirrodin cards on the battlefield before we cast Cloud. Then we want something that generates mana whenever we attack, whether that be the Reaver Cleaver or Sword of Feast and Famine to untap all of our lands. It really doesn't matter. We can even get Cloud up to 7 power to generate treasure tokens to help us get mana whenever we're attacking. Now, once we're able to untap our lands or generate more mana whenever we attack, that really opens us up to play extra combat spells. This allows us to attack even more, drawing even more cards, and deal damage to our opponents, and the goal is to kind of just live through the combat steps, kill all of our opponents, not necessarily cast our entire deck, but we're going to be able to win if we attack with Cloud the first time and we're set up. And again, the deck worked in a vacuum. While I was goldfishing, playing against myself, it was broken, but then something occurred to me. These creatures are very, very weak. Living Weapon cards can be as low as a 1/1, right? It comes into the battlefield, it gives a creature +1/+1, it attaches itself to that little germ creature token that's a 0/0, and you've got a 1/1. That's super easy to block, and whenever the creature is drawing you a card every single turn, opponents are going to block it. They do not want to keep taking that damage, they do not want to give you that card advantage, so, we had to include cards in the deck to buff our creatures. So that leads us to our first category with get them bigger. I mean, they're weak little dumb little dermed creature tokens. We need them to be bigger. Let's get them bigger. The first thing was Anduril. This is amazing because it allows us to attack and put a 1/1 counter on all of our creatures unless we have the City's Blessing. Then we're able to put 2 1/1 counters on all of our creatures. Amazing. Chishiro also just perfect for the strategy here. Not only whenever an equipment enters the battlefield do we get a 2/2, but additionally at end step he puts a 1/1 counter on all of our modified creatures. So again, they're getting bigger. I also included Felidar Retreat. I think this is very good here because I like the vigilance, and additionally it creates a body. Plus, it's going to put a 1/1 counter on our entire board whenever a land enters the battlefield. Kellen the Flay-Blooded is just kind of useful here. I like him mostly for the tutor aspect, but we can cast him later, put a bunch of equipment on him, and he's going to make our germs and our Mirrodin creatures bigger. Neali Sun's Vanguard, I love this guy here. He's going to give all of our attacking tokens double strike. Additionally, whenever 1 or more tokens you control attack, a player exile the top card of that player's library. You can play that as long as you've attacked with a token this turn. Extremely useful. We get card advantage. All of our tokens now have double strike. Reconnaissance is a no-brainer here. This allows us to remove our creatures from combat at any point, even after combat damage, so it's kind of like pseudo vigilance, and protects our creatures. Not to mention, Cloud only cares about attacking creatures, so we still get the card advantage. Sovereign Okenek is extremely busted here. This guy has an insanely high ceiling, and even at the low end, he's going to put at least one 1/1 counter on our creature every single combat step. I also like Sundering Eruption. Kind of crazy here. This is an MDFC I have just overlooked and recently found it. Shout out to Rachel Weeks. This is just going to make it to where our opponents can't block with their creatures that don't have flying. That's going to allow us to have an insane turn with Cloud, and they're not going to be able to block while we're just hitting them in the face. Zimriel, another card I had no idea existed until I started researching cards for this deck, is just going to give all of our equipped creatures indestructible whenever it's our turn, so extremely useful. Now that our living weapon creatures are hard to block because they're either bigger or just can't be blocked because of our reconnaissance effects, why are we running them, and why am I so sure that this is the most efficient way to build Cloud? Let me give you another scenario. Why wouldn't we just run Kimba effects and then have equipment that want to be equipped to creatures like Kimba? The simple answer is this. Let's give 3 mana for Kimba. Boom, 3 mana down, we've got a creature on the battlefield. And then let's talk about a very low costed equipment. Let's say it's 1 mana, right? So 1 mana and then 2 to equip. Boom, that's a 3 mana investment on our equipment and a 3 mana investment on our creature. And we're trying to go wide here. So we want to do that several times, right? To just generate more equipment and draw more cards with Cloud. Now let's talk about a living weapon card. 2 mana, we put it on the battlefield, and it's already equipped to a creature. So we're talking about a very low mana investment to refill our entire hand once our commander hits the battlefield. Then once our commander hits the battlefield, he refills our entire hand because he does have haste. And then once our hand is filled with more low cost equipment, we can throw them back onto the battlefield. And that's just going to allow us to cause a turn that not only refills our hand, but sets us up for the next round for an even bigger, heavier swing, allowing us to close out the game in 1 or 2 turns after Cloud hits the battlefield. This is going to segue us into our next category, the equipment we are running, because we're not just going to run living weapons, we are running other equipment that is just going to be insane in this deck. So let's get into it. One of the best cards in the deck is Helm of the Host. Helm of the Host is insane with Cloud. One, you can kind of just get rid of the equip cost, which is the most expensive part of this card, so that's amazing. We want to get this on the battlefield before we cast Cloud, and then boom, it instantly equips to him. Now we're drawing double the cards and generating double the treasure tokens as long as we can get him to 6 power, which again, or 7 power. It's not hard to get him to 7 power in the deck because of the equipment we went with, but without further ado, let's talk about some of the best ones in the deck. Sword of Wealth and Power. This one is a sleeper in the deck. Not only does it protect him, but additionally, it's going to be amazing for our extra combat spells. Doubling up on those is just not okay because it allows us to draw even more cards and find even more combat spells. And then you know what's really cool about these sword effects? It's going to deal damage twice whenever we double up on a combat spell, right? So we deal damage twice, and then we generate more treasure tokens from Cloud and the sword itself. And then if we cast another extra combat spell, it's going to get an additional copy because there was an additional trigger from the sword. And it just gets insane with double strike as well. So this sword with extra combat steps does allow us to win the game pretty quickly. The Reaver Cleaver and Sword of Feast and Famine kind of fit this category as well. We're untapping our lands and generating mana whenever we're connecting with Cloud, allowing us to cast even more for Mirrodin and living weapon cards, along with extra combat steps. If we have haste, we're drawing even more cards each combat as well. I did try to include as many combat spells as possible that give us an additional main or second main phase, because that second main phase is pretty important to cast additional living weapon spells and additional equipment to get Cloud bigger. So I did want the additional main phase. I was looking at that here. We're also playing some really good utility equipment like Adaptive Omni Tool, Pip-Boy 3000, Masterwork of Ingenuity. We have Colossal Hammer in the deck as well, just because, hey, that's 10 power right out of the gate. I love that. Dire Flail is actually secretly amazing in this deck. We do have to craft it, which takes a little bit of an investment, but once we get there, this is not only going to get Cloud's power to instantly 3, it's also going to allow us to sacrifice our treasure tokens to deal damage to our opponent's creatures and take them out of the game. Embercleave also really broken here because remember, this is a go wide equipment strategy, so it allows us to play Embercleave and almost always only have to spend 2 mana to get this on the battlefield. I'm in love with it. Sword of Forge and Frontier, playing additional lands in an equipment deck. I love it. Sword of the Animist, we get more lands on the battlefield. And then Umezawa's Jitte. I love this. Is it Umezawa's Jit? Umezawa's Jitte? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, I love this card here because it is going to give us those counters whether we deal combat damage to a player or not. And then we can easily remove those counters to get Cloud's power above 7. Also, it can gain us some life. We're not really worried about that. It can also remove creatures, so get rid of blockers. I just love the flexibility of this card, especially when you get double strike on Cloud. Somebody's just going to die, and it's going to be amazing. This deck also has a couple other commanders that can just helm the deck if Cloud dies, like Nahiri. Nahiri is absolutely insane. This was my first living weapon deck, and it transfers amazingly into this one. She attacks, you're going to exile the amount of cards equal to the amount of equipped creatures instead, and then you can cast equipment spells for free. Now, we aren't running broken high CMC equipment like we would be in a Nahiri deck, but it's still very good just to cast all of your living weapon cards for free, especially if Cloud is already on the battlefield. We're also running Chishiro. Chishiro can be another commander in this deck because now whenever we're casting our equipment, we're generating tokens, and then he's buffing those tokens up. I'm in love with Chishiro here. It just works perfectly. I also just wanted to shout out a really cool interaction Chishiro has with Pure Steel Paladin and then Bloodforged Battle Axe. So we're going to deal combat damage. We're going to get all of the token copies of the Bloodforged Battle Axe. We're going to draw cards because of our Pure Steel Paladin, and then we're going to get to equip all of those Bloodforged Battle Axes to all of the creature tokens Chishiro just created. This also works with Hammer of Nazan because Hammer of Nazan does not mean you have to equip the Bloodforged Battle Axes to the same creature that's equipped with Hammer of Nazan. And the Hammer of Nazan just gives the ability for any equipment to equip to any creature whenever it enters the battlefield. So same thing happens here. We connect with Bloodforged Battle Axe. We generate a ton of token copies of Bloodforged Battle Axe. We generate a ton of creatures, and then all of those Bloodforged Battle Axes can then equip to those creatures. We just don't get the card draw because Pure Steel Paladin is not on the battlefield. Anyway, it's still really busted stuff, and I'm really excited to see if I can get this off. I might build an entire deck around this strategy because it's just super fun to me. Let's talk about the deck's weaknesses, and you guessed it, board wipes. That's why we're running cards like Guardian of Faith. I like Guardian of Faith here because whenever creatures phase out, they actually don't unequip their equipment. So we get to protect our equipment and our creatures with one card. We're also running Soul Warden's Gambit. I love this card here because it's going to allow us to rebuild fast after a board wipe. We instantly get 5 creatures. Those creatures instantly get to equip to the most broken equipment on the battlefield. Then all we have to do is cast Cloud, and Cloud is going to draw us an entire new hand, get us back into the game. So the rebuild ability of this card is amazing. Also, one of our board wipes is Burn Down the House. I wanted to use this here not only because we can get Cloud's power above 5 pretty easily, and it can kind of be a one-sided board wipe that gets rid of all the little stuff on the board, but additionally, we might want to generate those devil tokens in the late game just to have some creature tokens to equip all of our equipment to. So since it gives us like dual purpose, I did think about Martial Coup, but I mean, it's a little bit more expensive, 7 mana versus 5, so we're going to go with Burn Down the House. I'm going to test it, and we're going to see how that goes. That's the build, guys. We've now officially built a synergistic Cloud deck. I can't wait to revisit this when the Final Fantasy set releases. Super excited to see what's in the deck, see what we can add from it, what we're not going to add for it. But until then, here's the deck. Go have some fun with it. Let me know what you guys think. With that being said, let's shout out those patrons: Irrelevant, Chicken Salad, Creator, The Professional Heal, and Excessum. You guys are amazing. I hope this helped you guys in your deck building endeavors, and I'll see you in the next one.